Welcome to this video tutorial for Virtual Racing School with the Global Mazda MX-5 Cup Series on iRacing. This week we head to the Phoenix International Raceway for the road course layout. It's a short lap but has a few very tricky braking zones with combined braking and steering. Once again I've driven a lap in default afternoon weather for reference, for which we'll play the lap through in full before then going into more detail with the driving analyzer. Okay, so that was a 1 minute 07.441. Starting off then on the VRS website, we've got the list of data packs selected. We're going to choose the Global MX-5 Cup Series, and we're going to choose week 7. Loads up the session details where you can download the lap files, the replay, and of course it's just using the iRacing supplied baseline setup. We'll click on Learn Track to load up the analyzer, and it will start to play the lap through. I'm just going to pause it and slow it to half speed as well as mute it. So for those of you who might not be familiar, you've got a bunch of traces from inputs. So you've got a steering angle input trace across the duration of the lap, as well as a speed from the car through the duration of the lap. Brake and throttle inputs, as well as some live inputs as well. So I'm going to click on sector 1 from the top here, which is the run from the start finish line to the braking point for turn 1. Now turn 1 is obviously coming off the very fast oval section at Phoenix, and it's pretty much flat out from the point where you turn in from near the wall here. So the car's really close to the wall when you start turning in, and you're basically aiming for this white inside wall near the pit exit. That's basically your target here, to get about as close to that as you can. So I'll play it through there and just pause it and switch to the chase camera. So yeah, you can see I'm pretty close to there, and we'll go to sector 2 because shortly after passing this wall at the bottom, the car will make it out onto the apron, the flat part of the circuit off the banking, and that's pretty much going to be the braking point for turn 1. So a note about this braking zone: it's a very long, wide entry into turn 1, and as a result you're braking whilst turning for most of the corner entry. So you can see here I'm only braking about 42% here, and of course at this point I'm right foot braking, so I'm blipping the throttle with my heel on the downshifts. And in terms of line, you want to basically follow this white painted line on the inside and gradually bleed off the brakes more and more and more as the corner begins to tighten more and more and more, and you start to turn in more to sustain that line. So when the line finishes, you want to be pretty close to it. Now this braking may induce a bit of oversteer in the car. So at this point I switched to left foot braking, and a couple of times as I'm playing with the throttle just to settle the car, basically what I'm doing there is just taking some load off the front tyres just to stabilise the car, because you can see at this point I've got a bit of oversteer. So as we play it through there, a couple more times I'm just teasing the brakes just to tighten the car up, just to get the car exactly where I want it to be, steering the car on the ideal line with the pedals basically. So at this point the wall on the inside ends and you spot this red cone, and that's going to be your apex. This is now turn 2. So you want to get as close to that cone as possible, maybe even make slight contact with it, and then at this point you should be able to pick up the throttle quite firmly. So I'm picking up the throttle just before the cone there, slight bit of hesitation as I wait for the traction, and I'm in 3rd gear, and I reach full throttle when I open the steering up. Despite that I get a little bit of oversteer there, but that actually sets the car up nicely for the next right-hander, where I have a slight lift just as I'm hugging the curb on the inside right, and then I get back into the throttle and commit to full power, and again a little bit of oversteer, but that's okay. The important thing is that you want to hug this curb through the right-hander, which will give you a nice line, a nice good amount of speed to set yourself up through the fast left kink of 6, where again you need to get close to this wall on the left before opening the car up onto this extra curb and runoff, which is going to be the entry into turn 7. Now I'll just show you this because all 4 wheels of the car are beyond the white line. You can get away with that, but don't go much wider than this, otherwise you might get penalised. So the braking zone is going to be just after that curb ends. We'll go to sector 3, and this then leads into the braking zone for turn 8. Now this is a really fast corner, and you don't need to downshift until after the apex of turn 7. So as a result I'm actually left foot braking here now, which is why you can see some overlap between the pedals. So I dab the brakes, that gets the car rotating, and then I just stabilise the car with a bit of throttle because I don't want the car to oversteer too much. So I've picked up my apex here on the curb, and just as you go over this curb you can pick up the throttle, and then I switch back to right foot braking shortly after that to brake for turn 8. So a couple of blips down into 2nd gear, fairly brief braking zone, and you are still kind of having the car loaded up, so you can't afford to brake too hard here. And notice how I hold the brakes all the way into the middle of the corner. So if I just show you that, so I've come off the brakes but I hold the brakes on in the middle of the corner, and that helps the car rotate because this is a double apex right-hander, and you want to make sure that when you pick up the throttle, which is roughly here, so in between the 2 apexes, that I'm now committing to full throttle, and the car is coming back and is starting to tighten. That's very important. So committed to full throttle, I've had an upshift before the 2nd apex and I've hit my 2nd apex, so that's very key. If you don't trail brake, the car won't rotate as much and you'll struggle to keep the car tight in between these 2 apexes, which is, like I said, absolutely critical if you want a good exit, which means hitting this 2nd apex. And then that takes you out on a nice line to be able to straight line this kink here and take a nice direct route towards turn 11. Turn 11 being of course the final hairpin which leads you onto the oval circuit, so it's the final braking zone on the circuit. Now approaching here there is a painted white line, and where that line begins, that's going to be your braking zone. So pretty much braking at the start of the white line, down a couple of gears into 2nd gear again, braking quite hard this time. It's probably the hardest braking zone on the whole circuit, so 50 or 60% is optimal. That's about threshold braking in a straight line until you get down into 2nd gear, and then you can start rotating the car and turning in just before this area of gravel here on the right. So again, you want to hold the brakes all the way into the apex to help the car rotate, and you don't want to have too high an apex speed, because you really want to get the car to turn well. I'm a little bit wide of the apex here, but that's not really cost me any time. The important thing is that I've got the car to rotate, so I'm able to pick up the throttle nice and firmly at the apex. So I pretty much go almost straight to full throttle there. And fortunately I don't get any significant oversteer. So I'll just show you the cockpit view, because I do have to make a slight correction. So because I've committed so early to full throttle, there's a little bit of oversteer there, but it's nothing too significant. The car does like to move around quite a lot, especially on the limit, so it's good to be comfortable with that. Into the oval now, obviously hug the wall all the way down the run into turn 12, where I'm pretty close to the wall there before I start turning in, and that's obviously to open up the corner as much as possible. Of course it's easily flat out, but you want to reduce the amount of speed that you scrub off to an absolute minimum. So there were some tyre marks on the entry there, which were my turn-in references, if you need some. And then obviously you want to aim for the painted white line at the bottom of the banking. But I actually apex quite late, so make sure that you don't turn in too soon and you don't get down to the bottom too early, because you want to make sure that you exit well. The corner's a little bit tighter on the exit than it is on the entry, so you want a later apex. So I've apexed now, and now I'm just obviously opening the car up for the best possible run to the start finish line to finish off the lap. You can find all setups, replays and telemetry for your own use and analysis on virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-on-one tuition with top drivers from the likes of Quanta Simsport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.